Long before Rome, long before Alexander, the fate of empires was written on the steppes, and there, in the wild lands of Central Asia, ruled a queen who would shake the ancient world. Her name was Tomyris. The Massagetae were a nomadic people, kin to the Scythians, living where the Persian Empire ended and the endless plains began. To outsiders, they seemed like shadows on horseback, a people of the bow and the saddle. But to Tomyris, they were family, her blood, her people, her kingdom. She ruled not by fear, but by respect. Widowed young, she became queen when others expected her to fade into obscurity. Instead, Tomyris rose stronger, embodying the Massagetae way of life, fierce, free, and unwilling to kneel before any empire. But far to the west, another power was rising. Cyrus the Great, founder of the Achaemenid Empire. His armies had already conquered Lydia, Babylon, and countless lands in between. And now, his gaze turned east, to the steppes, and to the queen who ruled them.
If Cyrus seeks my land, he will find not conquest, but death.
The stage was set for one of history's bloodiest encounters. A queen against an empire, a mother against a conqueror. And the world would never forget what came next. Before she was a queen, Tomyris was a child of the steppe, born into the fierce and restless people the world called the Massagetae. To grow up here was to learn two things early: how to ride and how to fight. Her father was a chieftain of a small Massagetae tribe. Her mother, a healer, known for her wisdom. From her father, she learned strength. From her mother, patience. And from the steppes themselves, she learned freedom. But life on the steppes was never gentle. Death came swiftly, in raids, in feuds, in sickness. Then her father, the chieftain, fell ill and died. After her father's funeral, the tribe expected Tomyris to fade into the shadows of her brothers and uncles. Instead, she rose, young Tomyris in armor, addressing warriors. Some looked doubtful, others surprised. Slowly, heads nod in agreement. Her claim to leadership was challenged, of course. But she proved herself not with words, with action. When raiders struck, she rode at the front, bow in hand, her arrow finding its mark before the enemy could even raise their shields. When disputes tore her people apart, she resolved them with cunning and steel. Tomyris in her 20s, now a mother, holding her infant son Spargapises. The tribe gathers around her, chanting her name. Her authority is sealed. By the time she was a woman grown, her tribe no longer questioned her rule. They called her not just daughter of the steppe, but mother of the Massagetae. When her husband died young, leaving her widowed, Tomyris carried the burden of leadership alone, with only her son, Spargapises, as her heir. She was not a queen of palaces or temples, but of horses, bows, and fire. Her power was not given by crowns. It was earned by blood. And it would soon be tested by the greatest conqueror of their age, Cyrus the Great. Why did Cyrus seek war with Tomyris and her Massagetae? Was it simple greed? Another conquest to carve into the empire's growing borders? Or was it fear that if he left these horse archers unchecked, they would one day threaten Persia itself? Cyrus sits on his throne, advisors kneeling before him. One shows him a map of the steppe. Persian sources whisper that Cyrus sought the rich grazing lands, the horses, and the warriors that could bolster his armies. Others claim there was a more personal reason, that he sought Tomyris herself, desiring her hand in marriage, hoping to bind the steppe to Persia not by war, but by union. When she refused, the great king's pride turned to fury. Persian envoys in richly embroidered robes approach Tomyris's tent. She sits at the head of her council. The message is delivered. She listens, expression hardening. Tomyris was no fool. She had seen Cyrus devour Lydia, Babylon, and lands far greater than hers. When his envoys came with their offers, veiled as friendship but edged with threats, she read the truth behind the words.
This is no alliance. It's a prelude to conquest.
Tomyris walking among her warriors at dusk. She stops at her son's side, hand on his shoulder. Her face is calm, but her eyes betray concern. Scouts returned with reports of Persian columns moving east. Smoke rose on the horizon. Her people whispered that the storm was coming. Tomyris knew she could not wait for Cyrus to choose the battlefield. She would have to meet him, head on. But Cyrus, master of empire, had already chosen his weapon. Not the sword, but the trap. Persian soldiers stacking supplies, preparing not swords and arrows but food and wine, driving wagons into the steppe. Cyrus the Great knew he was marching into hostile lands. He could not afford to fight the Massagetae on their own terms, swift horsemen on an endless steppe. So he turned to cunning. If the Scythian bow could not be broken in battle, perhaps it could be broken by desire. Persian spies set the stage. A lavish camp was made, a banquet of food and drink left as bait. The Massagetae had little use for wine, their lives bound to milk and fermented mare's drink. But Cyrus knew the lure of something so foreign, so intoxicating. Leading one wing of the Massagetae army was Tomyris's only son, Prince Spargapises. Brave, ambitious, eager to prove himself in the shadow of his mother's legacy. He saw the Persians retreating, their camp abandoned, and believed it was the perfect chance to strike. Spargapises dismounts, entering the camp. Warriors check every tent, every corner where the enemy might be hiding, preparing to ambush. They found no one. It looks like they left in a hurry. They abandoned everything: supplies, food, and wine. Lots of wine. What they thought of as an easy victory turned out to be bait. The men couldn't resist the taste of something exotic as wine. They laughed, they drink, they feast. What began as triumph will soon turn to disaster. The wine flowed, the warriors grew heavy and dull, intoxicated. Cyrus knew the warriors took the bait. He waited. And then, when the Massagetae lay drunk and unguarded, Cyrus gives the order. Persian soldiers struck. They storm the camp, swords flashing, torches thrown. Chaos erupts. Spargapises fights fiercely but is surrounded, captured in chains. His warriors are cut down or enslaved. Hundreds of Tomyris warriors were slain, and her son, her blood, her heir, was dragged in shackles before Cyrus himself, in his Persian royal tent, watching Spargapises struggle against his bonds. Some say Cyrus mocked him. Others claim he offered clemency, if the prince would bend the knee. But Spargapises refused. When his bonds were briefly loosened, the young man seized a Persian blade and ended his own life rather than live as Cyrus' prisoner. Tomyris was standing in her tent when the bad news was delivered.
Your Majesty, I have terrible news. Your son, he's dead.
She collapses on her chair, devastated, bearing the unbearable agony. For Tomyris, the loss was not only personal, it was the heart of her nation, the line of her people, taken by deception. Cyrus thought he had broken the Massagetae. Instead, he had given their queen a reason to unleash fury the world would never forget. Tomyris, now armored, mounts her war horse, her face more determined, more fierce than ever. Her battle cry carries over the wind.
Cyrus, glutton of blood, I swear before the gods, I will quench your thirst with your own.
And with that vow, she declares war against Cyrus's mighty empire. Tomyris had lost her only son, not in honorable combat, but by deception. Cyrus believed this loss would break her. Instead, it forged her into something far more dangerous: a mother turned avenger. Cyrus marched deeper into Massagetae territory, dragging his army further from supply lines. He relied on discipline and numbers. But Tomyris, she relied on the land. She commanded warriors who were born in the saddle, who could vanish into the plains and strike like shadows. Cyrus came expecting an enemy he could meet in open battle, but Tomyris had no intention of fighting where Persian steel was strongest. Instead, she turned the steppes into a nightmare, a war of ghosts. Riders appear, loose volleys, then vanish into the grasslands before the Persians can give chase. The Massagetae struck in silence and disappeared just as quickly. Swift horse archers rode in, loosed their arrows, and melted into the horizon. They never lingered long enough for Cyrus to strike back. Each day, more Persians fell to arrows they could not see, from warriors they could not catch. Every mile dragged the Persians further into unfamiliar land. Their supply lines stretched thin. Their water ran low. And always, the shadows stalked them. Never a full enemy in sight, only the sudden whistle of an arrow in the dark, the sound of hooves vanishing into the night. Cyrus in his tent, awake and furious, surrounded by nervous officers.
What? Are we fighting, shadows? I have broken kings greater than this steppe woman. Hunt them down and bring me her head.
Outside, the distant cries of raiding parties echo. A sense of paranoia fills the air. Cyrus was a conqueror of cities, of kings who stood their ground. But how do you fight an enemy that never stands still? An army of phantoms, a war of ghosts. This was no aimless harassment. Tomyris was weaving a trap, a strategy born of the steppe itself. She knew the Persians could not match her riders in speed or endurance. So she turned the plains into a battlefield of her choosing. Every raid, every sudden strike, was designed to drive Cyrus exactly where she wanted him. Persian scouts return, reporting attacks on their flank. Cyrus, frustrated, orders the army forward. Massagetae riders watching from a distant ridge, retreating just as the Persians advance. Again and again, Cyrus was shown only glimpses of his enemy. Small bands who appeared, struck, and vanished. Each time the Persians believed they were driving the enemy back. Each time they followed further, deeper into the emptiness. Night raid. Massagetae warriors set fire to Persian supply wagons. Horses scatter. Soldiers wake in chaos. By dawn, the steppe is silent again. It was a dance of shadows. Retreat, pursuit, ambush, retreat again. The Persians were chasing ghosts, and in doing so, they bled themselves dry. Tomyris on horseback, surveying the land. She points with her bow toward a narrow plain bordered by low hills, the killing ground. And then, when Cyrus's army was weary, half-starved and desperate for a decisive fight, Tomyris offered it. A wide plain, open ground, the illusion of a final stand. Cyrus, hungry for victory, marched straight into the jaws of her trap. The war of ghosts was over. The slaughter was about to begin. Cyrus believed he had finally cornered his enemy, but Tomyris had chosen this ground with strategy in mind. Here, in the open steppe, her horsemen could unleash their full fury. The Persians marched into what would become their grave. Persian war horns blare. The army forms into a massive block, shields braced, spears lowered. Across the plain, Tomyris rides at the head of thousands, her warriors circling like hawks, bows ready. She began not with a charge, but with arrows. A storm of shafts fell upon the Persians, cutting down men before they could even raise their shields. Then came the first wave, riders darting in, striking with spears and axes, then vanishing again into the dust. Persian soldiers locking shields, panicked cries as cavalry darts in and out, Tomyris raising her bow, loosing arrows calmly amid chaos. Each assault drew the Persians tighter, shrinking their formation, exhausting their strength. Cyrus tried to rally his men, ordering cavalry to chase them down. But those horsemen vanished into the endless plain, never to return. The ghosts struck again and again. a Persian cavalry unit breaks formation to chase Massagetae riders, but suddenly finds itself surrounded, cut to pieces. Cyrus, shock and rage on his face as he realizes it's a trap. And then, Tomyris gave the order. No more feints, no more shadows. From every side, her riders descended. 1,000 hooves shook the earth. The Persians, hemmed in, were crushed beneath the fury of the steppe. Spears shattered shields. Axes tore through armor. The once mighty army of Persia was unmade. Cyrus fighting desperately, sword flashing, cutting down foes but surrounded. He refuses to yield. He gets swallowed by the chaos, his banner falling. In the heart of the storm, Cyrus the Great fell. The conqueror of empires was destroyed not by legions or walls, but by the will of a queen and the warriors of the steppe. The battlefield lies silent, bodies scattered. Smoke drifts. Ravens circle overhead. The once proud Persian banners lie trampled in the dirt. Cyrus the Great, king of kings, conqueror of nations, lay among the fallen. His empire stretched from the Aegean to the Indus. Yet here, on the edge of the world, he had been undone. Massagetae warriors drag the fallen king's body to Tomyris. She dismounts. Her face is lined with sorrow, but her eyes burn with iron resolve. She took his head, severed from his body. She placed it in a wineskin filled with blood and spoke words that would echo through history. Tomyris holds the head aloft, her voice steady, raw with grief and rage.
Cyrus, you who thirst for blood, drink your fill.
Her face, not triumphant, but mournful. Her son is avenged, but the cost is written in her silence. History remembers her as a barbarian queen, a fleeting shadow against the might of Persia. Yet here, on this lonely plain, Tomyris defied the greatest king of her age, and in that defiance, she carved her name into eternity.